Remember Lolani Kalu of Malimwengu?
Jamani swahibu zangu mliopo maskani, hatuonani wenzangu, najua mwanitamani.
For years, millions of Kenyans knew his face. His voice was unmistakable. His storytelling was almost impossible to copy.
Binti yangu mdogo, sikiza ninakwambia, bado ungali mdogo. Jihadhari na dunia, asiyefunzwa na mama, funzwa na Mswahili.
Then, suddenly, he disappeared. For several years, nobody knew where he was, what he was doing, or if he was even okay. Some said he had left the country. Others whispered that fame had destroyed him. Far away from the cameras, Lolani Kalu was reportedly fighting battles that many of his viewers knew nothing about. He had lost his job. Even more painful, he was conned out of the money he had saved to build a home. At one point, things became so difficult that Kenyans would eventually rally together to help the man who would spend years telling their stories. So, what exactly happened to Lolani Kalu after he left NTV? And how did one of Kenya's most recognizable journalists go from national television back to village life? By the end of this video, you will know exactly what happened to Lolani Kalu after he vanished from our screens, the betrayal that broke him, and the year he nearly lost everything. Back in 1999, Kenya television was dominated by hard news, that is politics, tragedy, or breaking headlines. Then, NTV introduced something different. His name was Lolani Kalu.
Kanipa kulia wengu, kanipa na biriani.
And he did not want to talk about politicians. He wanted to talk about the people. His segment Malimwengu na Lolani Kalu took viewers straight into ordinary Kenyan lives, culture, community, and human stories. He delivered it in a poetic, almost musical Swahili, a style nobody else on television could replicate.
Swahili huyo wangu, hataki nitoke ndani.
While every other anchor chased the next scandal, Kalu was out finding the stories that made people feel something. And it worked. For nearly 2 decades, his voice became a fixture in Kenyan homes. He wasn't just reading the news. He was telling the stories that mattered. But television is a brutal industry, and even the most beloved voices aren't safe forever. In 2017, without much warning, NTV let go of a wave of prominent journalists. Lolani Kalu was one of them. Just like that, the man behind Malimwengu, a segment that had run for the better part of 2 decades, was off the air.
Mwaka wa 2017 kukatokea mipangilio ya Nation Media Group ya kujiweka sawa na jinsi ulimwengu ulivyo kwa hivi sasa katika mambo ya vituo vya utangazaji. Kwa hivyo kukatoka list ya kwamba tunastafishwa watu, na mimi nilikuwa mmoja wao walistafishwa.
For someone whose entire identity had been built around storytelling on screen, this was not just a job loss. It was the disappearance of a purpose. And what came next was worse than anyone expected. Immediately after leaving NTV, Kalu did not resurface anywhere else on television. He simply went home, back to Kilifi, to care for his aging mother. For over 5 years, he was completely off the radar. No interviews, no public appearances, nothing. It took a curious social media user, Ahmed Mohamed, known online as Asmali, to go looking for him. What Asmali found broke the hearts of Kenyans who remembered Kalu's voice fondly. Kalu had been conned out of roughly 1.5 million shillings.
Ukanunua shamba kabisa.
Naam.
Kiwanja ukaanza kujenga.
Kama
iliisha nyumba.
Wapi?
Money he had saved to build a house. A contractor took it all and vanished. Around that same time, a company he had done work for refused to pay him what he was owed. And his father was seriously ill, draining what little he had left. He had also tried starting his own production house, chasing the dream of telling stories on his own terms, but it never took off the ground. In his own words, he explained it simply. The money did not disappear because of reckless living. It disappeared the way it does for any Kenyan carrying more responsibility than income.
Sasa nimeamka sina hata shilingi mfukoni. Sasa nimefika hapo kwenye ofisi yangu na tafakari nitafanyaje. nina ujumbe wa simu ni kwamba kule Nairobi landlord tunataka kufukuzwa huku, tutafukuzwa, tutafungiwa kufuli huku. Ni vipi huku, kuna mpango wote? Sasa mimi nimechanganyikiwa hapo.
The man who once had the nation's attention was now struggling in silence, in a rented house, far from the cameras that used to follow him. Once a Somali shared Kalu's story, it spread fast. Kenyans who grew up watching Malimwengu could not just scroll past it. Kalu made a simple and humble appeal. 200,000 shillings for a camera and sound equipment, and 50,000 for a computer to edit his footage.
Kamera ya kwenda live ili mimi nifanye vile vipindi na computer ya kuedit na nini hivyo tu. Mkinunulia hivyo, basi. Kachanga. Watela waliochanga ni watu wa hali ya chini sana.
That was all he needed to start telling stories again, on his own terms this time. The response was overwhelming. Within a short time, he had raised over 200,000 shillings from ordinary Kenyans who simply wanted to see him rise again.
Unaweza kuamini kwamba baada ya masaa mawili watu wanapiga simu wanasema withdraw hiyo pesa kwa sababu haziingii zile pesa. Unaona? Paka ikatimia 1,300 na kama 50 hivi.
But with public sympathy also came public judgment. Rumors circulated that he had wasted his earnings on alcohol. Kalu pushed back firmly, insisting he was not a drinker and that his struggles were about responsibility, not recklessness. Back in the village, something interesting happened. Despite everything he had been through, young people started looking up to him for advice, for guidance, even for financial help. He called this his biggest challenge, being seen as someone who still had something to give, while he himself was trying to rebuild.
Kuhusu huu mzigo, mamangu sijamwambia, yamenitosha mapigo nipewayo na dunia, na kunizulia zogo kwa vile sikusikia asiyefunzwa na mama hufunzwa na Mswahili.
Years of struggle, years of rejection, years of trying and failing to find his way back into the spotlight. But Lolani Kalu did not stop. He began auditioning for Kenyan film and television productions, a completely different path from the Malimwengu show he was used to. And slowly, doors started opening. Lolani eventually secured an opportunity to work on Pete, which aired on Maisha Magic East. Then came an even bigger opportunity, a role in Sultana, one of the most talked about Kenyan productions of its time. The man who once vanished from our screens had found his way back, but this time as an actor.
Kama walivyosema wenyewe waliosema, la waridi hata lijauke vipi litabakia kuwa la waridi tu.
Lolani Kalu's journey after NTV reminds us of something television rarely shows. We see people when the cameras are rolling. We see the successful journalists. But when the cameras switch off, life continues. Careers change. Money disappears. Families need help. Plans fail. And sometimes, the person everybody assumes is doing well is quietly trying to figure out what comes next. For Lolani, leaving NTV was not the end of his story. It became the beginning of a much more difficult chapter, one involving family responsibility, financial setbacks, and years away from the spotlight. But eventually, he dusted himself off and found his way back to the screen. Not exactly as the Malimwengu presenter Kenyans remembered, but still doing what Lolani Kalu has always known how to do, being part of a story worth watching. And maybe that is the biggest twist of all. The man who spent decades proving that ordinary people's lives were worth telling eventually showed us that his was too. If this story moved you, let us know in the comments, and don't forget to like and subscribe for more untold stories of Kenya's most memorable faces. See you in the next one. Thank you for watching. Blessed.